Content over everything.
Yes, sir.
Do you think there's such a thing as Islamic culture? So when the religion comes, it brings a culture.
Yeah, but I say yes. I think that religions are born out of cultures. There's no religion that comes that is not born out of a culture. I think it's impossible for a religion not to be born out of a culture. But I also think religion informs culture. It creates culture. You see what I'm saying?
So then with the religion, would it then replace the culture of the people who are not practicing it with a new culture, an Islamic one?
It's a good question. And I think this is one of the things that we're going to have to go into when we discuss with the Muslim brothers and sisters. I think that from what I understand, you asked the question, does it affect the people that are not practicing it?
No, so like if first was trying to ascertain if Islam
Yes.
is also a culture. And if it is,
Definitely.
does that mean when a group of people take that,
Yes.
they take a new culture and forget their...
I think that throughout, if I relate to the real history of our people, the similar thing happens with Christianity. There are some people that take it on and completely reject their culture. And then there are some people that do what they call synchronization. So they kind of merge the two. You see what I'm saying? But I think that when you look at the trajectory of history, you have those, the more people are zealous about the religious tradition, the more they seem to let go of their culture. And within that context, they may create a new cultural context for how that operates within among their own people, but oftentimes you lose aspects of your own history and your own culture to go with it. That's my reading and understanding of history. You know what I'm saying? So I think it's an important conversation to have. But what you just asked is to me the most important question. You know what I'm saying?
Because if you take on the religion, you forget your culture and your past because it gets demonized.
This is the point, and I think that the difference with traditionalist quote unquote religion is that dynamic doesn't exist because it's very accommodating. So when Muslims and Christians first came, they found Africans very accommodating because there was no God competition in that kind of way between the traditionalists, if that makes sense. So you find instances whereby people were allowed to come and build edifices to their religion because there's not a competition. There's room for all the gods, so to speak, around there. Whereas if you come with a religion that whereby there's not that kind of room, it creates a different environment among the people there. You see what I'm saying? But as well, it's also the fact that these religions, they became the religions of the elite.
The religions of the elite.
Of the elite classes. So the ruling classes, the scholarship classes were governed by these religions. So it created a dynamic, a hierarchy.
So wait, so does that mean in the Mali Empire or Songhai, which people always associate as Islamic, even though it's African?
It's the ruling classes that were Muslim.
So the ruling classes were Muslim, but the ordinary people were still following most of them.
So there are some estimates that say in Mali, the society would have been half and half.
Okay.
Yeah. Some people say it would have been less than that. But I think Songhai was a more, especially because the Songhai Empire had leaders that were more fundamentalist in terms of their adherence to Islam. So there probably would have been more, you know what I'm saying? But they were definitely, up until the 1800s, the majority of West Africa was not Christian or Muslim, it was traditionalist. But the elites, for the most part, after Songhai, were Muslim.
Okay. They were the ones taking on the religion.
The religion, yes. But but the point is that it creates a hierarchy in terms of social mobility within that context, if that makes sense.
So if you want to move up, then you'll have to convert to that belief system. I've been hearing a lot of people claim that Islam and Christianity originated from black people, Africans.
Yeah, I think those who say that overstate the point.
Okay.
There's nothing in it. You know what I'm saying? A lot of the rudiments of it, and I think that at the beginning of all these religions, I think you'll find our presence there. For me, the question is the cultural context that defines the religion itself. So for me, the presence of black people doesn't mean that African culture is the dominant factor. The fact that it happens on the continent doesn't mean that it is African. Does that make sense? You know what I'm saying? Because For example, we've got Western-style democracy operating in African countries right now. It doesn't make it any more African. That's my, you know what I'm saying. That's where we come from with that. You know what I'm saying. So yeah, you know. But and that is the perspective of African-centered scholars in that respect, because the idea that things that are African can be, without exploration, negated and rejected, is something that we have to challenge. You see what I'm saying? And the reality is that it has to come from a place of, we are going to be validating our own ancestors. Because the brothers and sisters, for the most part, that didn't have that African-centered kind of trajectory, were not producing that work. Because their priorities were different. The priorities was adherence to proselytization of and conversion of our people to the religious tradition. You know what I'm saying? So it took for somebody to come and say, well, nah, we're going to validate things African, for us even to be able to have the conversation. You know what I'm saying? And I think that brothers and sisters who are in whatever religion need to respect that, even if they disagree with some of the conclusions of the scholars. But the tradition of scholarship and the intentions behind it need to be respected on its own merit also. I think that's important. You know what I mean? You get me? I did, long time no see.
How about you?
Can't complain.
I was going to ask you about this thing, slavery, that always comes up. I mean, my personal view, I think the Christians, people claiming to be Christians practiced it. People claiming to be Muslims practiced it. People who were atheists practiced it. People who were Jews practiced it. Africans or whatever belief system, they practiced it.
What's
so
that?
A lot of them.
Slavery, yeah.
So all of them are guilty. But it doesn't mean that every single person within that group practices it, but they're all guilty.
They're based on religious beliefs.
Say that again.
Enslavement of those people, they're based on religious beliefs.
A lot of them did. Now, I am not aware of a traditionalist who based slavery upon a religious tradition outside of like legal punishment for like wrong. So like, for example, I know of, for example, enslavement to shrines, whereby criminals were indebted to a community, and so they were made servants of a shrine. Do you know what I'm saying?
Sort of like the US prison system, isn't it?
Say again?
Sort of like the US prison system.
To a degree, yeah. I don't know of a tradition that says we are going to enslave you in the name of Eledumare, for example. I don't know of that. You see what I'm saying? Just because you practice another religion or you're lesser than. I don't know of that. You know what I'm saying? I do know of examples, however, whereby those systems over time become very exploitative. Yeah. So the one example could be the Osu of Igbo. Yeah. Now the story goes, originally they were the people that were indebted to shrines for the same thing I'm talking about. People committed crimes or whatever. But there is evidence of the fact that over time that system became exploitative. So it wasn't about correction anymore. You know what I'm saying? It condemned people, and it created a lower class among the people that factored in to breakdown in the system. You know what I'm saying? So there are examples of that. You know what I'm saying? But then even in that case, those people wouldn't go to another people and say, well, we need to enslave you because, you know what I'm saying, our God told us to enslave you. It's a different thing, yeah. So
can you still be Afrocentric if you are following any of those belief systems, in your opinion?
Yeah, the Afrocentric tradition is very broad.
All right.
Yeah, and this is what a lot of the people don't understand, right? So there are Christians who have a very Afrocentric outlook on their Christianity. Just what I'm saying, and Muslims, for example, and that kind of thing. But what it is, say again? Yes and no. So there are some Ethiopian Orthodox that are very Eurocentric. Like you go into some churches that are Ethiopian Orthodox and you see a white Jesus, for example. But then there are others who reject some of that stuff in it. That's what I'm saying. So yeah, it's not impossible, but the barrier is that because there are so many within the African scholarship tradition that are very critical, of Abrahamic religions, oftentimes people find it a barrier. Yeah, and because as well, there is a scholarship tradition in Islam. Many consider the African-centered scholarship tradition to be a competing tradition to the Muslim scholarship tradition.
How so?
Because of the African-centered scholarship tradition's criticisms of Islam among African people. You see what I'm saying? Yeah, because a key focal point of African-centered scholars is African culture and African spirituality. In the context of African culture, African-centered scholars have been critical of Islamic condemnations of African spirituality. And so many have rejected Islam as destructive because of that dynamic.
Because I think like when you talk about Christianity, Islam, and African spirituality, I think there's like a massive difference. Because I think people are Muslims more. I think they view it as shirk, innit?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's to an extent. So Muslims on shirk.
Yes.
He's totally out.
Yes.
Religion.
Yes.
So that itself is a massive,
Yes.
So you can see that.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? That's the point. So we've been critical of it, and for centuries, that because of the assumed superiority of Islam and Christianity in particular, very few people were questioning these things. It just so happened that people began to actually start questioning it now, and a whole movement developed that began to question these things. Well, really and truly, what they taught us about African spiritual systems indigenously, were they correct? And you could begin to investigate, and no, they weren't correct. So why are we ashamed to venerate our ancestors? Why are we ashamed to pay reverence to the tree and the river and the sun when there's nothing inherently wrong with these things? Why are we ashamed of these things? You know what I'm saying? So
That's the creation, isn't it?
it's the creation.
Yeah, it's
right?
the creation, but those religions don't worship the creation, they worship the creator.
Effectively, what their major critique of the African indigenous system is the fact that for them, the creation and the creator are separate and distinct. Whereas for the African traditionalists, the creation and the creator are intimately. One brother put it like this: it's not that the creator or God is the source of life; it's that God is life itself for the African.
Yeah.
Just what I'm saying, right? So when you have that kind of idea, the idea that the tree and the creator are not linked, like you know what I'm saying, they're two totally separate and distinct, doesn't make any sense. It doesn't, because if the tree is life, it's a reflection of life, then it must be a reflection of the creator.
It's the creation of the creator.
Basically, yeah. You know what I'm saying? So
Has the adoption of these religions, in your opinion, benefited the cultures, the various African cultures?
I would say the net benefit, there's been a net negative.
Net negative.
Yeah. Now, and this is the other thing, because the African-centered historian doesn't negate the greatness of empires like Mali, like Songhai, like Bakongo, all three of which
Well, this is what I need to
adopted
ask you.
Islamic Christianity. Go on.
Me personally,
Yeah.
I don't support kingdoms or empires.
Yes.
Because I don't care if they're black, brown, white. And the reason I don't support kingdoms or empires
Yes.
is that in order for them to exist,
Yes.
people need to be exploited. So
For the most part, I'd say, yeah.
Yeah, so whether those people are white, black,
Yes.
brown, that's why I don't co-sign or support them.
Yes.
So I've always wanted to go into a deeper discussion, not just with Europeans, but Africans. If a Turk says, yeah, big up the Ottoman Empire.
Yeah.
Okay, what was it that the Ottomans did that was that big? Big up the Songhai.
Yes.
What were they doing that warrants their empire
So
being praised?
I think that we are entitled as people to have social organization that is imperfect, that makes mistakes, that goes through periods of exploitation like anybody else, if that makes sense, right? But we learn from that and we evolve out of it. I think we're entitled to do that as a people.
to evolve out of it.
Right, you know what I'm saying? So just like, for example, so people ask the question about why, for example, Kemet is such an important, yeah?
I've never understood that.
Right, this is the reason why. Kemet is important, or the Nile Valley, let's say, because the Nile Valley is bigger than Kemet, right? But Nile Valley civilization, if we deal with the scholarship of Sheikh Anta Diop, who's like a proto-Afrocentric historian.
Is he still alive?
No, he died in the 70s, I believe. Yeah, but so he's prior to the term Afrocentric, but he's one of the main people that inspired the development of an African-centered scholarship tradition, yeah? But for him, it's about classical civilization, right? So just like Greece and Rome are classical civilizations for Europe. Nobody in Europe today wants to replicate Greece and Rome civilization to the letter completely today, but it's still their cultural center. You know what I'm saying? So they when they talk about democracy, they bring it back to Greece and Rome. The Olympics, they bring it back to Greece and Rome. Yeah. So the significance of the Nile Valley is that the Nile Valley kind of consolidated the development of African civilization. So it was a hub. Because civilization everywhere in the world revolves around rivers, right? And because the Nile is the longest river, so throughout history, people converged on the Nile from all over the continent. So it became a hub for the various different cultures that were operating on the continent. And then at another point in time, people diverged from the Nile as well. So they converged on the Nile at one point and diverged from the Nile.
Really?
Yeah.
So
right? You see what I'm saying? So there are various different groups of people across the Nile that came from different places, that went to the Nile, and then moved from the Nile and went to different places. So the idea
is that like proven though? Is that just like a fantastical?
Yeah, no.
Like,
and it's still being proved. So the evidence for the convergence is not really disputed. Yeah, among historians. The extent, the evidence, the divergence is not disputed either, except for certain elements of it. So people debate whether the Ashanti, for example, are descended from people of the Nile, or the Yoruba are descended from people of the Nile. But there is more and more evidence coming out that's because, for example, like the East and West Africa, I can't remember what they call it, but from Sudan to West Africa, there's like a natural kind of connection of rivers that facilitate travel. Yeah.
Does it go to Khartoum?
Yes, yeah. You know what I'm saying? So the idea is that traveling from East to West Africa wasn't as difficult as you might think at different points in history. So many people believe, because you would know in West Africa there are many groups of people that have oral history that tells them that they come from the East or the Nile or a great river in East Africa or whatever. And so, but up until recently there hasn't been a whole heap of archaeological or documented evidence of this, especially because European historians haven't given much credence to oral histories before.
It's a lack of account.
Say again?
Lack of account.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? But
that's our fault though.
Well, yeah, I agree, right?
We should have our own history.
Exactly, you know what I'm saying? But at the same time, more evidence is coming to light, especially because fields like linguistics are developing more. So it's more coming to light that there are groups in like the Chiluba in Congo whose language is related to the language of Kemet, if that, for example, you know what I'm saying? And you know, so and then other evidence coming to light that even a lot of the when you look at the book of Coming Forth by Day in Kemet, that some of the descriptions of the duats or the so-called afterlife is actually depicting regions of Central Africa. Yeah? So those people would have come from that region and brought that culture there, and that culture was depicted in the spiritual system in a particular kind of way. You know what I'm saying? So and because of so Nile Valley represents the earliest culmination of African civilization developing to a certain point. You know what I'm saying? Some people say it's the pinnacle. I stay away from that because it presumes that it creates a hierarchy of greatness, if that makes sense. I don't do that. I just say that it's classical. So that it means it's an origin point that we focus on in terms of a particular level of achievement that we, you know what I'm saying? So nobody would argue that Greece and Rome is the greatest, European civilization, but
There's
it's
some
their
values that there are.
but it's their classical civilization. That's all it is. So, and I haven't got a problem with that. But Diop was trying to do that because he's saying that basically he's trying to create, other than the natural sense of it, the intention behind his research was also to create what he called a great African epic. So that will center African people culturally and politically in the same way that Greece and Rome centers Europe culturally and politically.
Do you know that
So I'm saying.
in regards to political culturally and politically, Africa has like many cultures.
Yeah.
So how can it shape in every African country in terms of culture?
In the same way that Greece and Rome, my Somali brother, that Greece and Rome centers France and Britain and Germany and Spain and Portugal and Belgium. All of them have their different cultures. They have their different languages. Do you know what I'm saying? So yeah.
But the thing is, like African countries, particularly Nigeria, they've got like, different ethnicities, different cultures, different languages. So obviously, if they have like a political, economic belief or spiritual belief, they'll have like a different, all very.
Yeah, and variation is not negative. This what I'm saying. Like it's not negative to have variation. It just means that the variations, one, shouldn't be antagonistic, and two, shouldn't be a barrier to recognizing our commonalities. That's all it is. And so when you talk about Mali and Songhai, one of the things that was good about those empires is the fact that they, the idea of having quote unquote lingua franca, is not new to Africa. Like so, whereas people have their different languages, the idea that we can trade using a common language is not a new concept. But because we've lost a lot of our knowledge of our history, we don't know or we forget that prior to colonization, we didn't have this problem of being able to relate across languages. The idea of being only able to speak one language would have been strange to a lot of people in pre-colonial times, because a lot of people spoke many different languages. You know what I'm saying?
I understand, but like speaking one language, it's probably the best option because you don't want to create barriers.
Yes and no.
You want to create a commonality amongst people.
I don't know. I don't know if it's necessary to speak one language. I might say it's better to have a common language. You see what I'm saying? So that it doesn't have to negatively impact the other languages that are out there. But the other thing though is that another thing that Africans said in quote unquote anthropologists, so we prefer the term cultural scientists, and historians have unearthed is the relationship between African languages. I mentioned to Witness the other day online a book by the name of How Yoruba and Igbo became different languages. The idea is that they have the same root, whereas you wouldn't necessarily think that today. You look at Igbo and they say, "Rah, Nigeria's got hundreds of different languges." You know what I'm saying? But oftentimes, a lot of those languages would be related or have the same parent in that regard. So it's about having that understanding as well. You know what I'm saying?
Do you know that there's two languages? Are they from like a sub-clan or something like that? Do they derive from like a clan, or at the same time branch to sub-clans?
So I'm not a linguist, but as I understand how it works, languages that have a shared origin usually have one parent, and based upon social migrations or divergences, the languages develop differently. Or sometimes based upon one group's interaction with another group of people, a new language develops that is influenced by the parent language, different from another group, if that makes sense. You know what I'm saying? So there's various different kind of ways that languages can evolve. But what we call languages, because we've been taught about our own languages from European anthropologists, we don't have our own appreciation of our own languages. You understand what I'm saying? Our culture has been taught to us, and the concept of tribe has been taught to us by European colonizers.
But tribes has existed pre-colonial times.
Yeah, I agree. But the colonial concept of tribe doesn't match what existed pre-colonially.
So, for instance, during colonialism, tribe was used political, economical,
and more cultural. So for example, who was I listening to the other day that was making this point? But the idea basically is that this kind of rigid definition that we have of tribe, whereby it's fixed, and the idea, because the word tribe as an English terminology from anthropologists is tied to the concept of war in Africa. So the impression, say again? Yeah. So the impression that they give us is that Africa is a continent of warring tribes. When throughout different points of history, there was a lot more peace than there was war. They intermarried. That's what I was listening to. I was listening to a Muslim scholar, Usman Khan, and he's released a book about the scholarship tradition in Timbuktu. Yeah, and I was watching this video that is other scholars who are given a review of his book, and one of the brothers was saying that there's a saying in Wolof. He never said it in Wolof. He just said it in English, but he said that family names don't have no home. Yeah, so the idea is that you having a family name, it could represent itself among any group of people because people are fluid. They move among different groups of people. You know what I'm saying? You know, husbands and wives come from different groups of people, and so you might find different family names among different groups of people. If that makes sense. So the idea of tribe was more fluid, yeah, traditionally, and wasn't so rigid. But the colonial concept is rigid. You know what I'm saying? Anthropologically.
In my culture, if this was a smiling person, came from, the place where I was originally from, where my parents are from, and I told them where, my name is, and my tribe, and I told myself that, they'll automatically know my dad and my grandpa.
Yeah. That kind of thing. You know what I'm saying?
If I told somebody about the name of my grandfather, I told myself that,
yeah. You know, so it's not that we need to do away with tribe. It's more that we have to have a proper understanding. So yeah, after dark is Speaker's Corner, you know. You know what I mean? So yeah, so I say all these things, but really I'm at the moment I'm just giving the Afrocentric scholarship traditions kind of perspective on matters.
You're very patient though. I think people who will be challenging you about African-centered, what it means Afrocentric, I don't think they want to actually know what it is. They're just trying to demonize it. They don't really want to. It's like somebody coming up to a Pan-Africanist and asking them about claiming they want to talk about Pan-Africanism. It's a rhetorical question. They just want to criticize.
Criticize. Yeah, there's that too. But to be fair, I think there is that. Don't get twisted. I agree with you. I think that when it comes to the Islam thing, though, there are just Muslim brothers and sisters who are sensitive to the defending their faith. You know what I'm saying? Which I sympathise with. I don't take that away from them, but at the same time, I'm going to defend the African scholarship tradition. That's what it is.
I'm going to go Shaka Ra.
Black van man.
Yes, big up Shaka
Yes,
Ra.
man. I want to see the black van at some point. You know, you got to bring the black van somewhere around there so we can see the black van.
The van's there, bro.
Yeah, it's there. Yeah. All right, cool.
Come here.
Black van
man. Black van man. Come here.
Celebrities right there.
So I guess it's a case of knowing who's sincere.
Yeah. So but I think there are enough sincere brothers around there for us to have a good dialogue on this subject. So I look forward to it taking place. You know what I'm saying?
It'll be interesting as well.
Yeah, man. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, because they had a conversation a few weeks ago. I just wasn't here. But the Muslim brothers were very critical. So
I saw it yesterday. I saw it today.
Right. Yeah. So I thought let me come through. I had a brief word with Uncle Danjuma said to him, I want to continue that conversation, and he was agreeable to it seemed. So we'll go into that.
There's something I wanted to say to you about a history I recently found out.
Yes.
I've forgotten most of it, but I was looking at Nigeria, the northeast. You had the Kanem Bonu
Empire, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then I'm more interested in finding out about all the tribes that existed that nobody really talks about. Because everyone talks about the Kanuri, the Hausa, the Fulani, the Tiv, the Nupe. But I've been doing research and finding all these little tribes, like the Dadia and all these.
Yeah.
And I found out that during the Kanem Bonu thing, I've forgotten the name of the king, Takur. I'll get the information. But there was a particular tribe who practiced a belief system, which was called Mun, M-U-N-E.
Right.
And they had a symbol, a moon symbol.
Okay.
And for some reason, when that region became Islamic, the king there was so infuriated by that belief system that not only did he want to destroy it, but he wanted to get his hands on that symbol.
Right.
Because
I'm familiar with this.
Yeah.
And,
some-
but he destroyed it.
Yes.
And it created contention across the I don't. It's not. Yeah. I need to refresh my memory on the thing, but I know what you're talking about. And it created so much discontent among the people that they had subdued into the empire that it actually led to the breakup of the empire.
Because I only know it as MUNE.
Yeah. And you know what? I think I don't even remember that being the name of it.
Okay.
So maybe you've taught me the name of it just now. But I'm familiar with the story. I am familiar with the story, yeah, because he actually did destroy it. And it vexed off the people then.
That's why I asked at the beginning about Islamic culture. Is there such a thing as Islamic culture?
Yeah.
And if it does exist, does it then replace another culture? And that was...
When I speak to Muslim brothers and sisters, what they tell me is that Islam is not against your culture unless your culture goes against Islam. So in the sense of the fact that if this spiritual system as a culture would have been considered shirk, the emperor would have been felt justified in now not everybody did things like that. There were others, so in Songhai, for example, the King Sunni Ali was far more accommodating to traditionalists. Yeah, he was a Muslim, and some say he was nominally Muslim. Again, for the hierarchy thing, because of the trade relations and the kind of things there. So to facilitate trade, he adhered to Islam, but he was not rejecting. Yeah, and then there were others who were far more fundamentalist and far more rejecting. So not everybody did that.
Like you had that guy, King Warjabi, who was waging war against the Serer people.
Yes.
So he was much more fundamental.
Fundamentalist, yeah, and that happened quite a bit. Like more than people seem to want to give credit for. And it's not. Yeah. So my point is that those aspects have to be balanced. You know what I'm saying? And you're right. Because I want to come back to this thing that you said about empire. Because I agree with your assessment in general. I think that things have to be put in their context as well. You know what I'm saying? So a lot of the time, empire building was a protectionary measure. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't mean that everything that they did was right. It just means that we understand it. You know what I'm saying? We understand the context of things. But at the same time, even like the Ghana Empire, King Tenkamenin implemented forms of what might be considered today democracy that we can learn from. It doesn't mean that but they also may have had systems of servitude that we would reject. You know what I'm saying? So it's not about necessarily agreeing with the entirety of the empire, but understanding the context and taking what we will help develop us, but negating and correcting what won't do. Do you know what I'm saying? So at the moment, one of the groups that I'm studying are the Mossi. The Mossi were not considered their empire. They called them Mossi city-states. Yeah. Now there was some subduing of neighboring groups, but the Mossi come about. I believe they begin in the period of the Songhai. But there were groups of people that rejected Islam, yeah. So they formed. There was a group of city-states. There were 5 main ones, but they had an emperor, but really the city-states were autonomous, and then there was some struggling between which of the 5 city-states was going to be the dominant one, right? You know what I'm saying? But because they never had a system of land ownership, whereby even if they dominated a particular area and a people group, they never considered themselves to have rights over the land. You see what I'm saying? Which sounds weird, isn't it? Right? You see what I'm saying? But because the culture didn't believe in ownership of land, how they related to those people was that their land was still theirs. So I'm still studying how they facilitated that relationship. You see what I'm saying? But I'm very interested in the Mossi because
the Mossi,
Mossi. So they're based. They would be around what is modern day Burkina Faso, the northern part. So Ouagadougou was one of the dominant city-states. In Burkina Faso today, the capital is Ouagadougou. So it's a similar coming out of the same thing. So yeah, there's the.
Sorry, I'm going to go now.
Yes, sir. Good to see you. Good to see you. Good to see you. Good to see you. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, you know. So yeah, that's what I'm inspired by everything like that. I'm inspired by the Dogon history.
There's a lot of fantasy
Mali.
around the Dogon.
Indeed.
With extraterrestrials and stuff. I don't know.
But
if
when you study them more, because a lot of people are studying them now because of their link, because of a lot of their philosophy seems to relate to modern day scientific concepts. Do you know what I'm saying? But they were also a group that resisted conversion to Islam and migrated because of that purpose, but developed a culture and a civilization within that context that was very philosophical, very scientific, and very spiritual at the same time. Do you know what I'm saying? So I'm with you. I like to study not just the big empires, but the people, the smaller people groups that were around those empires. You know what I'm saying? In answer to your question though, why are the major benefits that people say that was brought to West Africa was the Arabic script? You know what I'm saying?
I've heard that.
Yeah.
I don't understand why that's a big deal.
It's a big deal because of, so it makes sense today because of historians rely upon, in terms of piecing together history, they often rely upon Arabic writers because...
But who did the Arabic writers rely on to get their information? Because I remember, because you were telling me earlier today about the Nile Valley.
Yes.
And how a lot of tribes came there. Couldn't they have taken the knowledge of hieroglyphs, which ended up and taken it down?
There is some that suggest that the Arabic script relates to at least one of the scripts from the Nile Valley. Or is derived from. I can't speak to that completely because I'm not a linguist, but I have come across that narrative before.
So from what you're telling me, the benefit of the Arabic script is the knowledge that these Arabic historians, scholars attained, and they were able to put it down
in writing.
Right.
But as well, culturally, because of the scholarship tradition that developed, and the nature of how the social order was structured, writing is it performs a function. Like we can't undervalue the benefit of writing, if that makes sense.
True.
And this is one of Uncle Danjuma's kind of key main arguments. And so because of, I'm with you. Like I take that argument with positive and negative, if that makes sense, because I believe there is evidence of the fact that prior to the coming of the Arabic script, Africans were developing in West Africa scripts, right? Do you see what I'm saying? So and so they were in a rudimentary form. It's just that those scripts took second place to the Arabic script when it came. However, the flourishing of a scholarship tradition in Mali and Songhai, I think, is a positive thing, even though it came with some negatives, if that makes sense.
I see what
you
you
mean. I'm saying? But in a sense of the fact that you can have documentation of medicine being practiced and documentation of astronomy being, studied, and what I'm saying, these are good things. You know what I'm saying? We wouldn't deny the positive aspects of those things, but to me, those things are African. Like what happens is when they become, because of the presence of Islam, they become Islamic for people. Whereas, you know what I'm saying? Whereas if Ghana, whereas Mali was built off of Ghana, and you know what I'm saying, and then kind of things there. So what was that sensibility towards science and technology absent West Africa before the coming of Islam? And if it wasn't, then it would just appear that this was a new evolution of a sensibility that already existed. But the context now became Islam, if that makes sense.
I understand,
You know what I'm saying? So I think that so that's, now what I've just given is a more African-centered appreciation of the thing. Whereas a Muslim will just say Islam came and advanced civilization.
Yes, I understand, yeah.
Do you see what I'm saying? Right, and that's the dichotomy. You know what I'm saying? You know what I mean? The celebrities them gone, the celebrities them are leaving, you know what I mean? What time is it now anyway?
I have no idea. Do you know what the time is? You know what the time is? Quarter to 7:43. Thanks very much. 7:40.
Like, man's gonna go home still. So yeah, I look forward to the conversation happening with the Muslim brothers and sisters. You know what I'm saying? We look forward, all love and respect. You get me? What? Yeah.
We're all crazy being here. It's cold. Yeah.
Today ain't the worst day, It's the temperature's just dropped down in the last half an hour. Yeah.
So usually how long
I look forward to that discussion. Well, no. I'll be honest, I don't have patience for the man you do, so I'll just watch from the side. I have no interest.
How long can you stand?
I hear you.
That's what it is.
Yeah, you know. Well, yeah, but that, man. Yes, sir. Good to see you, good to see you.
Content over everything. From your belly.
Man, say it straight. Man, don't listen to BBC. Man, don't listen to ITV.
Who are the sex of 9-year-old child?
Man, don't listen to
Look in the mirror.
Man, don't listen to ITV.
When you're brushing your teeth in the morning on the mirror, when you're washing your face, look in the mirror. Look your eyes and ask yourself the answer of this question. Let's go. Let's go. Let me give my presentation. Let me give you a presentation on the Bible. Let me give you a presentation. Let me give you a presentation. Look, would you have sex with me?
What does God
Would you become a
want to do
pedophile?
with 32
Would you become a
virgins?
pedophile? Would you become a pedophile?
What does God,
Would
your
you become a
God,
pedophile?
want to do with
I asked you,
32
would you become a
virgins?
pedophile?
I asked you that
Would you
question
become a
before.
pedophile?
Why?
Would
know
you become
that
a
word is
pedophile?
new nowadays. What
Would
does
you
that
become a
mean?
pedophile?
How new is that word?
Would you become a pedophile? Would you follow Mohammed?
Okay,
Would you follow his example?
Your parents and your grandparents,
Leave
how
my
old were they?
grandparents and